And we're back here on Inside Black and Gold. And as we told you earlier, we have a special guest. My name is Jeff Nowak alongside Steve Geller. And we're joined by Kevin Schatz, host of the Welcome to the Bandwagon podcast covering the LA Rams. How you doing, man? Great mustache.
Is that why I'm a special guest? Is it because of the mustache as opposed to just a guest? Is that what's going on?
Yes. And like, if you're listening to this podcast, I need you to understand, I'm not just joking around. This is a fantastic mustache. How much time every week do you spend grooming the mustache?
You know what's funny is if I'm actually waxing it, because it's a handlebar mustache, it has the curls on it. Then it only takes like 4 or 5 minutes to actually comb. I literally comb wax in it, and I put some wax on the side. Otherwise it takes, I just wake up and I kind of brush it. But I've realized through podcasting, which we use for this podcast, and another one I do, we use a lot of video. I spend a lot of time just like using my fingers and running it through it. I look like I'm obsessed with it, but I got to keep it out of my mouth and keep it trained. It's like anything else. So, yeah.
If you told me it was like a costume mustache, I would believe you. It's that intense. But we,
Thanks.
and to be honest, this is more entertaining to talk about than the Saints and the Rams. But we will get into it. So answer this question for me. Just how miserable is it being a Rams fan right now?
It is so difficult. I was going to make the exact same joke you just did. I was like, can we we stick with the mustache? Cause that's way easier to talk about right now than the Rams. It's been a dreary year. And my co-host and I, Larry, we joke about, how is it our fault? Like the podcast didn't exist until and then we do when the team starts sucking, so it's been hard, in terms of the podcast itself. It's harder to find content. It's harder to, and in LA, we're trying to build this fan base still. So we're coming off a Super Bowl championship season. Again, talking a little selfishly, we launched this podcast and we're very excited because we're like, all right, the fan base is going to grow and they're going to grow with us. And then we're just laying an egg all season. The Rams are, and it's
like even the title of the podcast. It seems to indicate that you anticipated the good times continuing.
Totally.
The bandwagon empties out pretty quickly when you start 3-6, right?
May have been a little bit optimistic with the name. That's what I mean. Look, we were like, all right, there's all these young fans wearing Cooper Kupp jerseys and Matthew Stafford jerseys. We're like, yes, people are going to jump on our bandwagon. And if anything, people are probably leave. We're doing our best to be like, hey, LA people who have had, who have not had an LA fan base to root for. And so you've been rooting for the Packers or the Saints, for example. Why don't you come and root for your local team? But people are not, it's a hard sell right now. It's a hard sell in LA. So.
I was remarking that I've been amazed this week, at least around, the Saints media room or what I've seen or heard it all. There has been no Rams hate week building up. And obviously the Nola no call is still a huge thing here. And there's just been no talk about that NFC Championship game.
That's very interesting too. I have not heard that either because you're right. The Rams were, public enemy number one. I don't have to tell you this in New Orleans for that no call. And maybe it's because we have a different quarterback. It's sort of a different team. It's been long enough. And I don't know. I guess in some ways I'd be asking you that, like, why do you think that is? I'm sitting here in LA like, hey, this team is hard to hate. But I don't sit in New Orleans saying that. So I'm not sure what that's about, but I haven't heard any talk about it either, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think it's because also too, no Drew Brees, no Sean Payton. Both teams are down in the dumps right now. And it really does feel like another lifetime ago.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm a huge Dodger fan, and the biggest scandal for the Dodgers is the Astros cheating scandal.
Yes.
And when the Astros win the World Series this year, as a Dodger fan, all Dodger fans are still so pissed about that. And that's something we haven't let go of. I guess the stakes were a little bit high. I don't know, maybe not, but there's still a lot of the same players, and it still feels fresh even 5 years ago. But for some reason, this one has seemed to be moved on. Seem to be brushed away.
So I don't get to talk to a lot of Rams folks. So I do have a question. So when the no call happened, what was the reception in like the Rams market? Like, was it like, oh, we got away with one, or was it like, great call, ref, good job, keep doing what you're doing?
No, I don't think anybody. I think the less we could talk about it, the better was the feel that I had. Like, look, we benefited from a call. There's no denying that. And that's an understatement, right? Like, I know that's the understatement of the century, especially talking to an New Orleans audience. We benefited big time from that call. And so I think we as a market had to fall into the camp of, well, there were a lot of plays throughout the game and things that the same thing that Sean Payton would have had to say, right? I'm sure he said more than that, but yeah, so that might be a bad example. This is what a coach is supposed to say.
Sean Payton actually wore the Roger Goodell clown nose shirt.
Yeah. So he actually is anti it. But the whole idea of like, I guess at a more minor call that happens, and people are kind of like, well, there were a lot of opportunities before the game that we could have done. We had to sort of do that ourselves. Like, well, I'm going to pat myself on the back here. I tend to be a pretty even keeled, like I can sort of see unbiased sides of things. There's probably a lot more emotional people out there who are like, no, screw that. We didn't cheat. That call was fun. I didn't fall into that camp quite personally. I don't know that many of us did, but yeah, that was not fun for New Orleans. I apologize on behalf of, I don't even know on behalf of who, just the universe.
Yeah, it was nothing the Rams did. It was actually the referees.
Yeah, I think that's why it was weird for Rams fans, because we were like, we're going to the Super Bowl. That's great. Like, I don't know what we could. We didn't cheat. It was something like the Astros. We didn't have trash cans banging to make him not catch that ball or not call that call. So
yeah. Well, for the Saints too, it was like extra bad because the year before that, it was the Stefan Diggs on that Minnesota game.
That's right.
I refuse to call it the Minneapolis Miracle, but that's what they have decided it was.
Yeah, there was no miracle there. That was just a missed tackle.
And then the year after that was Kyle Rudolph getting away with offensive pass interference in the end zone for another over. Anyway, it's been rough. So let's move on.
Brutal. Yeah, and I'm not trying to rub it in, but then you get a season like this season, right? It's like, oh God, now we might not even get the chance to be robbed in the postseason, right? In the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, speaking of getting robbed of the playoffs, why do the Rams suck?
If I had the answer to that question, I'd probably be working for the Rams. I'd have the solution, right? It is the strangest thing ever. Look, we came into the season with such high expectations, and it's crazy to be able to look back at game one against the Bills now, and there was such a buildup to that game for the Rams and Bills kicking off the season, two high power teams, and we basically didn't show up to that game, and we could sort of chalk it up to Super Bowl hangover. We didn't do a lot in preseason to kind of gear up for this. We weren't ready, but then just every game following has been more or less the same, more of the same. I'll be completely honest with you. Our podcast is much more based on kind of the fan experience. So I am not an X's and O's guy. So I'm not going to even be here and try to pretend that I can get into complete detail about what is wrong with the team. But as a fan, as a person who loves rooting for the Rams, we just are not putting things together. We have the lowest efficiency in both passing and running. I saw a chart on that. I think maybe you shared that, Jeff. I can't remember, but it has just been game after game of not looking terrible, but just not looking great, and teams beating us. So it's been really sad. It's been really sad.
When you look, I know the offensive line has been a big area of concern. It just, I guess it's between injuries and just a lack of talent there that there's been such a shuffle up front.
Yeah, 9 games in, we've had 9 different starting offensive lines. So it's been mostly injuries. Those are my dogs fighting in the background, by the way. They are just as angry as I am about the Rams. We haven't been healthy. We've lost several of our offensive linemen for the season. So we're using young guys, and look, I don't have to spell it out. Like that makes it really hard for quarterback to feel comfortable, and then getting rushed constantly. So Matthew Stafford isn't having a ton of time to throw the football and make decisions, at least not what he was expecting to have with a healthy offensive line.
No, we can identify very much right now. The center we have is on injured reserve. Our other guard is currently dealing with a pectoral issue, and our starting left tackle just had a concussion last game. So we're down 3 of the 5 starters right now.
And the first round pick they spent on the left tackle was just spent the last 8 weeks on injured reserve. So it's not a great time right now.
Not a great time. Yeah. It's funny. I listened to an episode of your podcast, I think right after your loss to who'd you play? The Steelers.
Yes.
And as I was listening, I was like, this sounds exactly like our podcast. It's this sort of attitude of like, I don't even know, hands in the air. I don't even know what to do anymore. Like, this has stopped being funny, that it's almost funny. It's just, it's not fun.
Well, so like I have this thing so it's usually just me after the games because Steve is the sideline reporter. So he's tied up after the game. So I usually do the post game podcast by myself. And when they win, I call it like a recovery pod because it's like, okay, go get drunk and we'll talk about it. But like when they lose, it's a therapy pod. And I've had to do a lot of like actual therapy, I think, during these podcasts because it's just like, I mean, it's just so brutal. Like, even, and maybe I'm more attuned to it just because like, when the coaches say stupid shit and then I tweeted, I end up hearing all the responses because they seem to think that if they tweet at me, somehow the coach is going to hear that.
Totally.
But yeah, it's like just the energy around this team, and I'm sure it's the same with the Rams to some extent. It's just so like it's so negative. It's like I think there's a certain point where teams forget how to be bad, or like a fan base forgets what it's like to be a bottom feeder. And it's natural. Like every team has to go in that cycle. Like the Patriots are on their way down right now. Like they don't want to admit it, but they're there, like the Steelers are right there too. Like it happens. But it's always funny to watch in real time the fan base just kind of realize what it is. And that's what the Saints are right now.
Yeah, and I think for the Rams, it's happening way sooner than we wanted it to happen, than we expected it to happen. I mean, look, we have returning players. We had healthy returning players, star players, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, Jalen Ramsey, and that's what makes it all the more frustrating is that I know I admitted to not being much of an X's and O's guys, but like, even not being that, none of this equates. We should still be good. So we're kind of having to have that reality of, oh yeah, we're not making the playoffs this year. And the other, the funny other similarity between us and the Saints is that we're in not great divisions right now, where theoretically we're not eliminated and things could get weird and we could win a few games and the Seahawks could lose a few and the Niners could lose a few and we could find ourselves somehow in the postseason, somehow in the playoffs, that is. So who knows? I'd almost just rather be completely eliminated at this point. So at least there's the freedom of being like, all right, hey, we just get to throw the ball deep and see what happens,
The other similarity is, and I know this to be true just because it was the only thing anyone talked about last year, is the Rams, just like the Saints, have leveraged a lot of future assets. It's not like they just are bad. Like the Saints don't have a first round pick to enjoy for being bad. And I know the Rams sent a lot of picks out, to bring in guys like Von Miller and stuff like that. Or did they sign Von Miller? I can't remember. Did they trade for Von Miller?
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't remember.
I know they made a bunch of trades, right? They were going all in. And I've always said, like, when you have a chance to win a Super Bowl, going all in is the right move, right? You would be doing a disservice to your fans if you felt like, well, we could have won, but we weren't willing to make that move, right? And so then they won, so you can get away with it. The Saints didn't win.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it frustrating is they don't have that Super Bowl. They can't go when they're watch the worst football game you can remember. And then you go on YouTube and type in like, oh, Saints Super Bowl highlights. Like the ones from 2009 just don't get it done at this point.
You've been holding on to those for 12, 13 years now. And they're running out of steam, huh?
Yeah.
No one's around anymore.
Exactly. There is not a single player from that Super Bowl roster currently on the Saints.
Yeah, it's literally a whole different team. Yeah. No, that is frustrating. And I know this sounds silly. I don't mean this patronizingly. Like my heart goes out to you. I feel bad. Like because at least for the Rams, we got the Super Bowl last year. That feels really good. And now we're faced with that reality of, oh shoot, this is about as good as it gets because we don't have any picks coming on the way to make this any more exciting. So I think that's why it hurts even more because we have these players that are healthy and happy and we just have to watch them not win games is all. So yeah, I feel for you. I do.
So just in the more practical sense, one of the things that obviously is going to be different for this game than anyone expected is Cooper Kupp's not going to be there.
Mhm.
So, obviously Allen Robinson is a name that people will know. Who are
Mhm.
some of the other players who might step in and kind of fill that void for the Rams that, Saints players might not, or Saints fans might not even know about right now?
Yeah, the one that on our podcast we were talking about the other day is whether the tight end game is going to show up, because we have two pretty strong and exciting tight ends. Tyler Higbee is a name that some people have heard, and Ben Skoranek is one that we keep. He has moments of really like flashiness, and that could be a big connection, because as of today, at least, it looks like Stafford's going to be cleared to play. So hopefully we'll have our starting quarterback in. Those are the two to kind of look out for, I think. We haven't had a lot of success with the receivers that we were expecting to have, other than Cooper Kupp's been, the whole audience knows this, I would assume, like, he's been unstoppable. He's been so consistent. And so I just hope that somebody shows up in their place. But yeah, I'm hoping to see that tight end game, have some fun and see those guys get some yardage for us.
Has there been any kind of explanation on why Allen Robinson has struggled so much this season? Going into this year, the addition to the roster I thought was going to be huge for this team, especially under head coach Sean McVay, being able to utilize him a lot more than he was in Chicago. But the numbers haven't just been there. Has it been trouble adapting to a new system, or just not being able to gel, or a whole bunch of combination of things?
Yeah, my best guess is just all of the above, right? Like, I don't know for sure, but I do know that, yeah, that name had a lot of expectation on it coming into the season, and we were expecting, like, oh my gosh, all right, we got Cooper Kupp, and now we got Allen Robinson, and this tandem is going to be unbelievable, is going to be unstoppable. And at least my perception of it is that, like, Allen Robinson felt underutilized. Like, it felt like we weren't going to him very much. And when that consistently continued to happen as the season went on, I have yet to hear an explanation for that, but I have a theory. My theory is that just there's something internal that is, for some reason, they don't feel confident going to him as much. And look, maybe having a guy like Cooper Kupp makes that happen, where you do want to go to him. But we'll see. I mean, this could be a chance. The other big name is Cam Akers. That was one who was expected to be great for us. And he was out for 2 games, I think it was, because it looked like he was going to be traded, and then he suddenly came back. And I don't know. Like, again, much like I expected the Rams to be good and expect that they could turn it on at any point, maybe these guys, maybe Cam Akers, maybe an Allen Robinson show up, and all of a sudden we're a really, really scary team again. I don't know. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I drafted Allen Robinson in fantasy, and I drafted Matt Stafford in fantasy, and so you can imagine that fantasy team is not doing very well.
Yeah, I'm sorry on behalf of all the Rams. Yeah, all the fantasy owners.
Yeah, it is their fault. It's not my fault for making bad decisions.
It is. Yes, I'll support you on that, Jeff.
So I guess my question is, when things have gone well for the Rams this year, and that's obviously very few and far between instances, but when things have gone well for the Rams this year, what have they done well?
Yeah, I mean, at least offensively, just moving the ball, being kind of having a good pace of play, getting quick snaps in and going down the field. I mean, I feel like there's been multiple games where our first drive of the game is very solid, and we're doing what you're supposed to do. We're getting first downs. We're getting good yardage on second down, so we don't have stressful third and fourth downs, And so yeah, we've had moments of successful passing games. The one thing that has not been successful at all is any running game. We have not had any success on that. So it's scary to think about trying to rely on that more. But yeah, when the passing game is there, we're pretty good. And look, we have what people have said is maybe one of the best players in the NFL, and Aaron Donald. And when he's pressuring a quarterback and getting in his head and forcing turnovers, it's great. But Aaron Donald's been just fine, right? He's looked fine, but it hasn't been this imposing defense that we were hoping to have. And so kind of another sort of thing that we expected, that we've had flashes of it looking good, but nothing consistent. There's been very little consistent to say this is what the Rams have been great at this year. So just little flashes here and there.
Yeah, it's really surprising when I, start looking at the stats and you look at those defensive numbers. I was just amazed on how little pressure, sacks were being tallied up for this team. And you think about, obviously, like you said, Aaron Donald. What's been the vibe up front there? Why hasn't the defensive line been able to, get their action going, just like the offensive line's been struggling too?
I don't know what it is, and the best that I can think is maybe just the energies that feed off of each other.
Right.
Side of the ball is doing well, so we're going to show up and do it too. It's been too much of, I think, maybe the defensive line feeling like they have to do too much, and that getting in their heads. That's the best I can come up with.
Okay, so I've run out of things to talk about, but I do want to say one thing, which is that I've always appreciated the fact that the Rams have a player named Ramsey.
I thank you for that. Yes, I think
Yeah.
about that every time I type his name out for anything that I'm doing. I'm like, wow, he's
It'd
got
be like if the
Rams in
Saints
his
had
name.
like Scott Saintsy.
Yeah, exactly. If a Saintsy showed up, he would be, on every billboard in New Orleans, I'm
Right.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
it's his kismet. Like he was born to play for that team. Anyway, that's all.
By
That's
the
all.
way, if you look, let's keep an eye on Jalen Ramsey this week, not for anything football related, but I just noticed this last week, and it's apparently been an ongoing thing. He's been wearing different colored socks than the rest of the team. So the rest of the team might be wearing yellow pants and blue socks, and it looks real clean. And for some reason, he has on yellow pants, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. So
Has he gotten fined for that at all?
He does. He got fined a stupid amount for it, and I'm sort of like, dude, can you just, like, I get it. Like, there's a quote that he has of, like, there are more important things the NFL should be focusing on, and maybe that's the statement that he's trying to make. So good for him, because he did just make it. But I'm like, dude, can you just cooperate? And it also drives my OCD crazy, because I'm like, all the blue socks and one yellow. So you're welcome if that drives you or any of your listeners crazy as they're watching now.
That reminds me of I think it was Jabbar Gaffney, who, yes, when he was playing for the Steelers, they had these yellow and black striped socks on a throwback jersey, which Saints are going to be wearing throwback jerseys this week, in case you didn't know that.
Cool. Nice.
And so he like twisted them so they looked like a barber pole.
That's great.
I'm not kidding. Here, let me share my screen. So this might not even make the podcast, but I need you to know this since the sock thing is bothering you.
Exactly. Yes.
Like, that's what they looked like.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Those look super cool, but
so they're supposed to be the straight stripes.
Yeah.
But he like twisted them.
Yeah.
So they look like a barber pole. And he got fined for that.
He got fined for doing that or no?
Yeah.
Really?
Of course he did.
God, that sucks, because if
that's
you're
technically the uniform.
I know. If you're just straight up wearing different colors, I'm sort of like, all right, get with it. But that is a display of creativity right there that I am a fan of. And he's being punished for it.
This uniform is the ugliest thing on the planet to begin with. Like, I made it look interesting. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah, those vertical stripes look terrible.
They're
so
awful.
I want to.
I don't know who okayed that, but it was a bad decision. All right, that's all I got. Steve, you got anything else before we head out?
No, but yeah, this looked like when the schedule came out, obviously a much more intense matchup than we have this week. Unfortunately, both teams have just, kind of been a huge disappointment and making our lives miserable.
I'm calling it right now. This is going to be the game of the week. It's just going to be explosive. It's going to go to overtime. It's going to be crazy and wild. There's going to be back and forth, and people are going to be like, see, you shouldn't have slept on these teams. I'm calling that now. And I'm also being totally unrealistic and optimistic here.
Yeah. It feels like 0-0 tie. First one to 20, it feels like, wins this game. I don't know.
I don't expect a high score by any means, but
first team to a 2-digit score wins this game.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, come on, 10. Here we go. Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure being on with you guys, and I hope for a good game. I obviously want the Rams to win, so I'll say go Rams go, but I do wish the Saints luck moving forward. I hope you guys have something to cheer about as the season moves on.
Yeah, it's no doubt pretty brutal.
That couldn't have said it better. All right, we've been talking to Kevin Schatz, host of the Welcome to the Bandwagon podcast. Check it out. Good stuff all around. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yep.